On the dawn of June 6, 1944, the world held its breath. Operation Overlord, the largest amphibious invasion in history, was about to crash against the shores of Normandy. Thousands of young men, packed into landing craft, stared across the churning English Channel towards a coastline bristling with defenses. This was the Atlantic Wall, Hitler's formidable barrier, designed to repel any invader. Every beach was a fortress, every approach a death trap. The challenge wasn't just to get men onto those beaches, it was to clear them, to neutralize the mines buried in the sand, to cross deep anti-tank ditches, to overcome towering concrete bunkers, and to provide cover for the infantry. Conventional tanks, powerful as they were, simply weren't built for this. They would drown in the surf, get stuck in soft sand, or be blown apart by hidden explosives. The stakes could not have been higher. Failure here meant untold casualties, a prolonged war, and perhaps even defeat. But even as the landing craft churned towards the French coast, a secret weapon was preparing to join them. A collection of bizarre, almost comical machines, born from the mind of an unconventional genius. Machines that looked less like instruments of war and more like something out of a mad scientist's workshop. They were affectionately, or perhaps mockingly, known as Hobart's Funnies. And without them, the story of D-Day might have been very different. The man behind these extraordinary creations was Major General Percy Stanley Hobart, known to many as Hobo, a name that perhaps fittingly suggested a wanderer, a man outside the usual rigid structures. Hobart was not a typical military officer. He was brilliant, yes, but also notoriously abrasive, fiercely independent, and utterly convinced of his own strategic vision, a vision that often clashed violently with the conservative thinking of the British Army establishment. Born in 1885, Hobart's early career marked him as a visionary. He was an early advocate for combined arms warfare, for the strategic use of tanks as independent strike forces, rather than merely infantry support. He commanded the 1st Permanent Tank Brigade, and later the pioneering Mobile Division, which would evolve into the 7th Armored Division. The famed Desert Rats. He understood tanks not just as metal boxes, but as instruments of speed, shock, and maneuver. He was ahead of his time, far ahead. This forward thinking, however, came at a cost. His radical ideas, his unwavering belief in mechanized warfare, and his blunt, uncompromising manner earned him powerful enemies within the War Office. He was deemed too disruptive, too unorthodox. In 1940, at the height of Britain's peril, after a distinguished career, Hobart was summarily removed from command. He was retired, effectively sidelined, and ironically, given a role as a corporal in the Home Guard, teaching local defense volunteers how to use Molotov cocktails. A general, reduced to teaching civilians how to throw homemade bombs. It was a humiliating dismissal for a man of his stature and intellect. But fate and a certain far-sighted prime minister had other plans. Winston Churchill, always with an eye for unorthodox talent, recognized Hobart's brilliance. He knew the approaching invasion of Europe would require more than just conventional bravery. It would demand unprecedented ingenuity. He personally intervened, bringing Hobart back into active service in 1941, tasking him with raising and training the 79th Armored Division, a unit destined for a very specific and highly secretive purpose. Its mission: to develop and operate specialized armored vehicles that could overcome the unique challenges of an amphibious assault. Hobart was given a blank check, and perhaps more importantly, the freedom to innovate. He gathered around him a team of engineers, mechanics, and soldiers who shared his unconventional spirit. They understood that the beaches of Normandy would be unlike any battlefield seen before. They studied reconnaissance photographs, interviewed commandos who had raided the French coast, and meticulously analyzed the German defenses. The problems were clear. First, mines, thousands of them buried just beneath the sand, designed to shred landing craft and advancing tanks. Second, anti-tank obstacles. Concrete tetrahedra, steel hedgehogs, dragon's teeth, and deep, wide ditches that would trap any standard tank. Third, soft ground. The beaches themselves, particularly after being churned by artillery and tides, could bog down heavy vehicles. And finally, fortifications. Concrete bunkers, machine gun nests, and artillery positions that needed to be neutralized quickly and efficiently, often at close range. Solving these problems required a radical rethink of armored warfare. It meant going beyond firepower and armor, delving into engineering solutions that were often clunky, sometimes absurd-looking, but always intensely practical. Hobart and his team approached these challenges with a relentless pragmatism and a healthy dose of black humor. They knew failure meant slaughter. So they experimented, they failed, they learned, and they innovated. The Funnies were not just tanks. They were solutions, forged in the crucible of impending battle. Let's meet some of these remarkable machines, starting with perhaps the most famous and certainly the most dramatic, the Sherman Duplex Drive, or DD tank. Imagine a Sherman tank, already a formidable weapon, but with a collapsible canvas screen extending upwards, turning it into a makeshift boat. Below the waterline, two propellers powered by the main engine pushed it through the water. The idea was simple, yet revolutionary. Launch the tanks far offshore, let them swim to the beach, and then drop their screens, revealing a fully operational tank ready to support the first waves of infantry. This concept was terrifyingly audacious. Tank crews were not sailors. The canvas screens offered minimal protection against waves, let alone enemy fire. A single breach could flood the tank, sending it to the bottom with its crew. The training was intense and rigorous, often conducted in secret Scottish locks, honing the skills needed for this amphibious ballet. There were drownings, there were near misses, but the crews, driven by Hobart's relentless spirit, mastered the art of swimming tanks. On D-Day, the DD tanks were launched in waves. On the British and Canadian beaches, Gold, Juno, and Sword, many of them successfully made it ashore. Their unexpected appearance, emerging from the choppy waters often ahead of the infantry, provided critical fire support, suppressing German defenses and allowing the foot soldiers to gain a foothold. But it wasn't always smooth sailing. On Omaha Beach, where American forces were supposed to receive similar support, most of the DD tanks launched too far out or in rougher seas, resulting in a devastating loss of armor. Many sank, taking their crews with them, contributing significantly to the horrific casualties suffered there. The drama of the DD tanks, their triumphs and their tragedies, perfectly encapsulated the high-stakes gamble of D-Day. Next, we have the Churchill AVRE, the assault vehicle Royal Engineers. Based on the heavily armored Churchill tank, which could traverse almost any terrain, the AVRE was less a tank and more a multi-tool of destruction and construction. Its primary weapon was the petard mortar, a spigot mortar that fired a 40-pound charge nicknamed the Flying Dustbin. This explosive was devastating against concrete bunkers and strongpoints, capable of blowing gaping holes in fortifications that ordinary tank shells could only scratch. Imagine facing that, a colossal projectile designed specifically to tear down your defenses. But the AVRE's true genius lay in its interchangeable attachments. It could carry a fascine, a massive bundle of wooden poles, typically 6 feet in diameter and 8 feet long. This ungainly bundle was dropped into anti-tank ditches or craters, creating an instant bridge for other vehicles to cross. It could deploy the SBG, small box girder bridge, a 10-foot portable bridge that could span gaps of up to 30 feet. Some AVREs were fitted with plows to clear debris or destroy obstacles. These tanks were the ultimate problem solvers on the battlefield, the engineering backbone of the assault, clearing the way inch by painful inch. Then there was the fearsome Crab. Again, based on the Churchill tank, the Crab was designed to tackle the most insidious threat, landmines. Mounted on the front of the tank was a rotating cylinder, adorned with heavy steel chains, each ending in a weighted hammer. As the tank advanced, the cylinder spun, causing the chains to violently flail the ground ahead. This continuous hammering detonated mines, clearing a safe path, often under intense enemy fire. The sight and sound of a Crab in action were unforgettable, a roaring, clanking beast throwing up clouds of dust and sand, punctuated by the sharp cracks of exploding mines. It was loud, it was slow, and it made an enormous target, but its effectiveness was undeniable. Whole sections of beaches and roads were cleared by these mechanical monsters, saving countless lives that would otherwise have been lost to hidden explosives. The psychological impact on both sides was immense. For the Allies, a visible sign of progress. For the Germans, a terrifying symbol of the invasion's relentless advance. And for dealing with stubborn enemy bunkers and dug-in positions, Hobart's men developed the Churchill Crocodile. This Churchill tank was equipped with a flamethrower, capable of projecting a searing stream of ignited fuel up to 120 yards. The fuel, along with compressed nitrogen for propulsion, was carried in an armored trailer towed behind the tank, a vulnerable but necessary addition. The effect of the Crocodile was not just physical, it was deeply psychological. The sight and sound of such a weapon could break the will of even the most determined defenders. Concrete bunkers, impervious to most shells, could be assaulted with fire, suffocating and burning out their occupants. The sheer terror inflicted by these machines often led to rapid surrenders, minimizing further loss of life. Beyond these main players, there were other funnies. The Bobbin, which laid a roll of canvas carpet over soft ground to prevent other vehicles from sinking. The Ark, another bridge-laying tank that literally became the bridge itself, allowing other vehicles to drive over its body. And specialized bulldozers. Each was a testament to the ingenuity born out of necessity, a direct answer to a specific problem posed by the fortress of Normandy. The training for the crews of these specialized vehicles was exhaustive and conducted in absolute secrecy. They lived and breathed their machines, understanding their capabilities and limitations intimately. They knew they would be on the front lines, often alone, facing the brunt of the initial German response. They were engineers, pioneers, and warriors, all rolled into one. And their moment of truth arrived on June 6, 1944. On that fateful morning, as the first waves of infantry surged onto the British and Canadian beaches, Gold, Juno, and Sword, Hobart's Funnies were right there with them, or often just ahead of them. The DD tanks, defying the choppy seas, emerged from the water, their guns spitting fire, providing crucial suppressing fire that saved countless lives. The Crabs advanced, flails spinning, clearing pathways through minefields. The AVREs, with their petard mortars, smashed concrete bunkers, while others dropped fascines into anti-tank ditches, transforming obstacles into traversable terrain. Individual stories of heroism abound. A DD tank on Sword Beach, disabled by a shell, continued to fire its main gun, drawing German attention away from the advancing infantry. An AVRE on Gold Beach, despite being hit multiple times, successfully dropped its fascine, allowing an entire column of tanks to cross a vital obstacle. These machines, often clumsy and slow, performed their grim tasks with an efficiency that was nothing short of miraculous. They were the unsung heroes of the initial assault, methodically dismantling the Atlantic wall brick by painful brick. The stark contrast with Omaha Beach highlights their importance. American forces, while having some DD tanks, either launched them too far out or chose not to deploy them due to heavy seas. Other specialized breaching vehicles were largely absent. The result was catastrophic. On Omaha, without the benefit of these purpose-built machines, the infantry faced an unyielding storm of fire and impenetrable defenses. Casualties mounted rapidly, and the beach became a slaughterhouse. While the courage of the American GIs eventually prevailed, their experience underscored the vital, life-saving role Hobart's Funnies played in minimizing the horror on the other beaches. They didn't win D-Day alone, but they undeniably opened the door. In the aftermath of D-Day, Percy Hobart remained in command of the 79th Armored Division, continuing to develop specialized vehicles for the remainder of the war. Yet, despite the undeniable success of his Funnies, his contribution was often downplayed or forgotten by many of his contemporaries. His maverick spirit, which enabled such innovation, also ensured he remained something of an outsider. He passed away in 1957, having seen his vision validated but perhaps never fully appreciated during his lifetime. Today, the legacy of Percy Hobart and his Funnies is undeniable. The concept of specialized engineering vehicles for breaching defenses, for mine clearance, for bridging obstacles, it is now standard practice in modern armies worldwide. From mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicles to sophisticated bridge-laying tanks, the spirit of Hobart's ingenuity lives on. He taught us that in warfare, pure brute force is rarely enough. That imagination, adaptation, and an uncompromising dedication to solving specific, brutal problems can turn the tide of battle. Hobart's Funnies were more than just eccentric tanks. They were a testament to human ingenuity under unimaginable pressure. They remind us that sometimes the most effective solutions are the ones that look a little bit ridiculous, the ones that challenge conventional wisdom, and the ones that are championed by individuals brave enough to be called mad by their peers. They were odd. They were bold, and they helped pave the way for victory on the beaches of Normandy. And for that, we owe Major General Percy Hobart, the maverick general, a debt of gratitude. The victory on the Normandy beaches, hard-won and bloody, was only the beginning. The Funnies continued their relentless work as the Allied armies pushed inland. The landscape of France, though different from the immediate coastline, presented new engineering challenges. Villages turned into strongpoints, hedgerows became defensive lines, and rivers and canals needed to be crossed. Hobart's 79th Armored Division, instead of being disbanded or reassigned to conventional tank roles, found itself indispensable. The AVREs, with their versatile attachments, were crucial in breaching the formidable bocage country, a dense network of ancient earth banks and hedgerows that turned every field into a fortified position. The petard mortar continued to blow holes in reinforced farmhouses and bunkers, while fascines and bridges helped rapidly overcome craters and destroyed infrastructure left by retreating German forces. Every advance relied on the methodical, often dangerous, work of these specialized machines. As the Allies liberated France and moved towards Belgium and the Netherlands, the terrain once again shifted. Water obstacles became paramount. The rivers of Europe, the Seine, the Meuse, the Rhine, were natural defensive lines, often heavily fortified. Here, the larger bridging versions of the Churchill tank, known as arcs, came into their own. Instead of carrying a portable bridge, an arc was the bridge. Its ramps would be lowered, and other tanks and vehicles would drive directly over its chassis, transforming it into an instant, though temporary, crossing point. This innovative approach allowed Allied forces to maintain momentum, bypassing destroyed bridges and outflanking German defenses that relied on natural barriers. The Churchill Crocodile flamethrower tanks continued to strike fear into the hearts of German defenders. Their psychological impact was immense, often leading to immediate surrender when conventional assaults had failed. Imagine being holed up in a bunker, thinking yourself safe from shell fire, only to see a torrent of searing flame erupting towards your position. The choice between burning alive or surrendering was stark, and many chose the latter, saving Allied lives in the process. Hobart himself remained a force of nature. He was constantly pushing for new developments, adapting existing designs, and foreseeing future requirements. His division became a clearinghouse for innovation, a place where engineers and soldiers could bring their ideas for specialized equipment to life. The 79th Armored Division was not just a unit. It was a testament to the power of dedicated military engineering, a living laboratory for overcoming the most stubborn battlefield obstacles. However, the path of innovation is rarely smooth. Not all of Hobart's creations were flawless. Some ideas proved too complex, too unreliable, or simply not necessary in the heat of battle. There were mechanical breakdowns, design flaws discovered under combat conditions, and instances where the specialized nature of a funny meant it was less effective in an unexpected role. But these setbacks were always overshadowed by the overwhelming successes and the lessons learned that continuously refined their capabilities. The impact of Hobart's funnies extended beyond the battlefield. They fundamentally altered how military planners viewed amphibious assaults and combined arms operations. Never again would an invasion be conceived without highly specialized engineering support. The experience of D-Day, particularly the contrasting outcomes on Omaha and the British-Canadian beaches, cemented the understanding that bespoke solutions were critical for overcoming complex defensive systems. This paradigm shift was a direct result of Percy Hobart's unwavering vision and his refusal to conform. He understood that future wars would demand more than just bigger guns and thicker armor. They would require smarter, more specialized tools. He fought against the entrenched conservatism that often stifles innovation in large institutions. His career serves as a powerful reminder that sometimes the most valuable assets are not those who perfectly fit the mold, but those who dare to break it. In the decades following the war, many of these funnies were dismantled, scrapped, or returned to their original configurations. Few survive today as museum pieces, silent testaments to their extraordinary past, but their influence remains deeply embedded in modern military doctrine and equipment. Look at any major army today, and you will find specialized engineering vehicles, mine-clearing plows, combat bulldozers, armored bridge layers, and vehicles designed for urban breaching. All can trace a direct lineage back to the pioneering work of Hobart and his unconventional division. The story of Hobart's funnies is ultimately a story about human ingenuity in the face of impossible odds. It's about recognizing problems, even when they seem insurmountable, and daring to invent radical solutions. It's a tribute to the engineers, mechanics, and tank crews who not only conceived these machines, but bravely operated them under the most brutal conditions imaginable. They were called funnies, but their impact was profoundly serious, shaping the course of history and saving countless lives. So, the next time you reflect on D-Day, remember not just the brave infantry on the beaches or the mighty battleships offshore, but also the strange, wonderful, and absolutely essential machines of Major General Percy Hobart. The swimming tanks, the mine-flailing monsters, the bunker-busting AVREs, and the flame-throwing crocodiles. They were the key that unlocked the Atlantic Wall, proof that sometimes the wildest ideas are precisely what's needed to achieve the impossible. Their legacy is not just in steel and fire, but in the enduring spirit of innovation that continues to drive military and technological advancement even today.